Like, I think people are always trying to reinvent the wheel ultimately. Like, how can I be cleverer than the way that it was done 4 years ago or 8 years ago? Well, do you know what? Actually, the component parts of a good cold calling script still work because they've always worked. Because humans are humans and they haven't changed that much. Everything around the humans has changed, but the way we engage, the way we listen, the way we pick up what someone's saying to us and why someone's saying it to us, those things haven't changed.
Greg Freeman, welcome to the show.
Hello.
You run a business called Data Literacy Academy. Inception was in 2022, September. You have since booked 9 million of revenue for the business, working with clients like Bentley, the MOD, and many, many more. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's start with why are you an entrepreneur? Like, why did that even happen?
So it's a really good question, and it's one of the two that everyone asks at the end of interviews. So I do our kind of final sign-off interviews, culture interviews. Still, I still like to meet everyone we hire, and it's always the question: why the business? Why your own business? And I think for me, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. When I was younger, I'd buy stuff in bulk off eBay, flog it as individuals, and make a margin on it. That was just kind of the way that I went about making money a lot of the time. And then during university, it was very much about like nightclub promotion and learning how to sell and all those types of things. So I think I've always been drawn that way. But joined an early stage company straight out of uni, went through the process of a master's at University of Birmingham, and one of my lecturers was an industry professional, so she ran the module, but she also had her own business. Her husband also had his own tech scale up in Birmingham, and they just hired me straight out of the course, which was a super cool thing. It made the masters worth the money because you go straight into a job, so that was nice. But I just got a bit of a vibe that actually there's a world that is beyond the grad scheme. And that was kind of the thing that everybody wanted. Everybody wanted to do a grad scheme. And I remember being sat there in the University of Birmingham library, RIP, it's now been knocked down and replaced by a modern building, and just thinking, I don't want to work for Virgin Media in their grad scheme. And it was sorry, Virgin Media, it was your application that made me think I'm never doing one of these applications again.
That's a damning report.
Yeah,
for
exactly.
Media.
I'd already done JLR, I'd already done some of the big four, and I just thought, do you know what? I don't actually want to work for these companies. This isn't what my future looks like. I find it quite restrictive that everybody goes in at the same level, and almost for the first 5 to 10 years, regardless of how competent you are, how much work you put in, you're going to go at the same trajectory and the same speed as the 100 people they hired you with, because that's the way the grad schemes work. So I didn't like that idea. Anyway, then spent a bit of time in that business, learning customer success, learning marketing, ended up in sales. And then my wife and I, not my wife at the time, but my now wife, went traveling. So we traveled for 9 out of 12 months in 2016-17. And I just used that as a bit of a time to work out what I wanted to do. And I remember we were in Peru. We were on a really long bus journey around Peru. And rather than just like sitting and looking at the outside world, which I was doing as well, but I listened to How to Start a Startup, the podcast series from Y Combinator. It's just inspirational in a sense of you can have an idea, you can build a thing, and it can become something that everybody knows. And there's episodes with Airbnb and all those types of businesses. And I just remember thinking, when I get back, what I want to do is find the route to do that. So I went back and led business development in a number of early stage startups, took those businesses each through to kind of Series A type level. But I always knew it was almost guinea pigging on somebody else's dime. I thought that was going to be a sensible way to do it. Like, you can raise a load of money and blow it if you get it wrong. So why don't we practice this whole go-to-market game on somebody else's money, which the founders were very comfortable with. We did well. It worked for them. But yeah, I think it was always that thing of I'd listened to that How to Start a Startup once. I actually listened to it 3 times while we were on that trip, like 20 episodes 3 times, just getting my head around like what would it actually be? How would I actually do it? And it was that. It was just a brilliant, like, inspirational thing that people can have an idea and turn it into something the world knows about. And that, I think, is why I'm doing what we're doing now.
Awesome. Inception then, just for maybe some of the viewers that might not know, although it is exactly what it says on the tin, but what Data Literacy Academy actually is, what you do. We'll talk obviously about the transition of sort of how it's been positioned over the last couple of years. I mean, it's still a really, you're a young guy. It's a really young business, but you're doing amazing things. You've had some great growth. You've got a pretty sizable team now. But yeah, in your own words, I guess, describe.
At a basic level, we help large enterprise organizations to train their people in data, right? And I think what's interesting is to people who are listening to this podcast, the idea that people wouldn't understand that data was valuable and have basic data skills and feel comfortable looking at data and using it in their decision making is probably a little bit foreign, would be my guess for most people and this has been one of our challenges all the time. For our ideal customer profile, we're like, absolutely, you guys should exist. This is why you exist. To venture capital, to private equity, to other startup founders, it's like, sorry, you do what? You train people in data? Like, yeah, that's what we do. That is the business. And we do everything from change management, internal marketing, and promotion of like data, its value, AI, its data, its value, through to live education. And we have a SaaS platform that is kind of on-demand, scalable across the entire organization. As you mentioned earlier, James, we've got a real privilege. We work with some amazing brands. That's been one of the most exciting things about the business for me. I'd always typically sold to startups and scale-ups, so I thought we were creating a business that was going to target those companies because that's where my network was. That's what the go-to-market would look like. Sold to a couple of those, and they were really powerful clients in a sense of they taught us a lot very quickly. Particularly one, there's a brilliant edtech business called Aston Learning. We sold to them and they were brutal in their feedback. It was like, we're a learning company. This is what you're doing all wrong with your learning. So we have a number of weeks, as I'd call them in the business, an Atom week. That was a week where everything was just like, how are we going to fix this situation? We need to learn so much from this situation. And their team were unbelievable with us. They really, like, from an education expertise perspective, they really, really helped us through that week and then the following weeks. And as long as we committed to improving, they stuck with it. And yeah, it was a good week for the business. But our third client was Bentley Motors. Our fourth was SSE PLC, who are FTSE 20, and our fifth was Aston Uni. And really grateful to those 3 chief data officers, and they're a core part of our journey. I was actually with one of them last night, and they're a really core part of our journey. But it just told us that this is an enterprise business, so we now sell exclusively to enterprise, and that is a journey in itself, like learning to sell and learning to run a business that is enterprise ready, that has the operating models, the kind of the backbone from a structures, a security, all those types of things. It's a different ball game, but it's a really good ball game to be in, I've got to say. I think from a thesis perspective now, I would only ever work or run an enterprise focused business. That would be my thesis. If I was an investor, I'd only invest in enterprise businesses. Like, I think the market opportunity, if you're in enterprise, is just night and day compared to if you're an SMB, or the access to the market, I suppose, and the ability to scale fast is night and day.
Fascinating. I mean, I was obviously going to bring up the first 5 or the famous 5 for you and clients. Obviously, what a roster. It's like the best 5-a-side team you can put together from a perspective of first 5 clients. But let's talk about, super small team at the time. You were doing everything. I mean, you still do a lot now.
I do.
But, at the time you were wearing, let's say, 10 different hats, like many people do when they first start a business. But getting those 3 names as a first 5 clients is impressive, probably insane to look back at, to some regards. But you came from a background of BD. You were in a position that you kind of had honed your skills as a salesperson. You got a few other businesses to a really great position. So you weren't coming at it from a place of no experience. You definitely had some experience, but selling to smaller businesses, SME scale ups, etc. How long was it to go from that like 0 to 1? I think that's where people struggle most, is around that acquisition piece. The question I definitely get asked the most, and when I get feedback from people listening to the show and they say, James, I'm so curious about how your how the guests that come on your show acquire clients. So obviously, to go from your 0 to 1 at data literacy, having those 3 in that first 5 clients, what position did you start going into the business going, I'm going to carry on going, and after startups and scale ups, to going, nah, enterprise is the way to go?
So to answer your detailed question there, we in terms of bookings, we went from 0 to 1 in about 9 months. So it was a fairly rapid journey to. So we booked our first revenue on the 9th of January 23, and by the end of Q3, we'd booked over $1 million. So that was a fairly rapid rise, much quicker than any other business I'd been in previously. I think the market tells you ultimately, like you can want it. You don't know when you first take a business to market unless it's a business to consumer business, and man, those terrify me. You will never find me doing a business to consumer business. I have so much respect for business to consumer founders. I just think they must live every day on the knife edge and trying to work out the acquisition model, and something changes in the environment around them, and all of a sudden they're just a victim kind of thing. I don't think I'd ever do that, and a lot of respect for those people. But in terms of how we were guided to that market, it just happened. Like, you go out thinking one thing, and then actually you see all your inbounds and you see all the engagement you're getting, and you feel the conversations that are resonating. And as I said, startup founders just didn't really get why their people wouldn't be data literate already, versus speaking to enterprise chief data officers who were investing tens of millions of pounds in technology and automation, and their job kind of depended on it being adopted in the business. They just got it. And Gartner at the time, and when you work in our world of enterprise, Gartner are one of the kind of pillar thought leaders, there's no doubt about it. They raised data literacy from number 7 to number 2 on a list of priorities for chief data officers between now and 2030. So it was just a bit of a perfect storm with enterprise ultimately. And the good thing about enterprise is that they will pay for impact. So as long as you have clear definition of outcomes, you can evidence that down the line, it's worth it to them to invest, because the ROI is just astronomically different. If you get this right at enterprise, you might save or make £100 million next year that you wouldn't have done otherwise, versus a startup scale up. You're never going to make that money because you've not got the baseline scale to begin with. So I think the opportunity is just so much greater in that enterprise market, and it came to us. So yeah, we pivoted quite quickly. I mean, the SSE deal, the fourth one, was the first, but we've done it many times since, where we were head to head with one of the big four. So Asher Khan, their CDO, said to us, look, it's you guys or it's Deloitte. And I was like, okay, cool. Let's see how this goes then. And in the end, the expertise carried, and the focus, the speciality, having a clear niche, having a clear vision and mission for our space and our space only, I think is the thing that still compels people to work with us. I think we see the space in a different way. We're not doing this as a side of desk. We are wholly committed to just data literacy and AI literacy now, but that's 2 years on. And I think it's that understanding of who we are and what we care about and what we believe in that is different to the rest of the market, that probably still carries us through to this day, if I'm honest.
So the initial revenue growth is going to be down to you. You were probably doing absolutely everything yourself, right? So you booked yourself the first million of revenue, which is incredible. Well done. But also like an amazing feat. A lot of people do say that startups, especially in B2B, should do the first million as a founder themselves. And after that, you can amplify your efforts, maybe put a playbook in place, etc. So I would like to dig in a second to how you did that. It's only 2 years ago, so you should be able to remember. But I think also I want to, before we go into that, do a bit of your job for you and sell Data Literacy Academy. The expertise, you mentioned it, but you're not a data expert. You might be now.
Yeah. So I think I had become one. So one of the challenges that we face and we solve actually, and one that we talk about really regularly, is data is such a breadth. Like most people, when they think about data, they just don't even know how broad it is as a topic. And when you throw, you can probably throw digital in as a part of the continuum and AI in as part of the continuum. It's about as broad as any topic you'll ever come across, actually. So by the time I founded Data Literacy Academy, I was definitely a highly credible expert in the infrastructure, architecture, strategy type space. Ironically, more the tech side of it. I'm not still even really that much of an expert in the front end bit, so I don't engage that much with the business intelligence tool as a creator, any of the things that a lot of people will see as their day to day. But when it comes to building architecture infrastructure, I can do all that because that's the business I was in before I set up Data Literacy Academy. But my degree is in education, so and I've always been a people focused person. Like I'm a team sports person, and I've always captained or run the clubs, and I believe massively in the culture and the power of people and bringing people together. So I think, again, I mentioned the phrase perfect storm earlier. That knowledge of my own journey being so difficult to learn data, because I was in a business where everybody was a data expert, yet none of them could teach me really anything I needed to know, because they were just so far away from where my starting point was. Ultimately, they couldn't remember a time where they didn't get why data was valuable and how to use it. And so that was an interesting part of the journey. So combining that kind of background in pedagogy, so pedagogy is the theory of education, that pedagogical background in my degree, combined with having been on my own data literacy upskilling journey, but having to take myself on it, alongside being a credible data expert in certain elements of data, it was, again, just a perfect storm of a business for me to create, I think. And ever since, and yeah, I don't do most of those bits now. There's people in our business who are far better at pedagogy and learning design than I ever could or would be. But it helped to have that base in all the bits, I think. And then the thing that I will always come back to. So again, talking about future theses, I do someday want to spend some time on the other side of the desk and do some time in VC or PE. I would only ever invest in a business that had a proven commercial founder, because there are some good businesses that could have been good businesses that are dead because technical people couldn't sell them. And therefore, I think that again, it was that perfect storm of being able to create the business, but also take it to market, which is probably defined the growth.
This episode is sponsored by Opus. Opus brings entrepreneurs together to create opportunity through power of connection. Opus is a curated community for business builders who understand that relationships are the backbone of business and success. If you are an entrepreneur, founder, business builder, laser focused on a mission, Opus could be for you too. To find out more, go to joinopus.org. Now back to the show. Yeah, 100%. Done a pretty good job so far, and obviously got pretty impressive trajectory to go as well. So go to market. That first year, firstly, were you scared, going into it, or were you brazen? Talk me through that feeling of getting started, but also, come on, we're here to educate the everyday founder, that are in it themselves, those that potentially are a similar place in their journey as you, some who are way before, who many will be, and some maybe who are a bit further on in their journey, who are looking to upskill their knowledge. That's why we have this show. That's why people listen. So you went from 0 to 1 million in the first 12 months. Incredibly impressive. Working with 3 household names. Again, incredibly impressive. I assume they weren't school friends from 30 years ago or 20 years ago. So how did you get them locked in?
Outbound is king. At that early stage, pick up the damn phone. Like if you don't pick up the damn phone, you are less likely to be successful, in my opinion. And people will tell me I'm wrong and the world has changed a lot. I get it. I mean, last night, I'm in London today because we were at an event where we were the headline sponsor and our brand was everywhere. But that's 2.5 years in where we can afford to be the headline sponsor of a massive event with 700 people at it. You can't do that on day one. Marketing is not the answer on day one. It gives you a good foundation if you do it in the background and you work it all. You work on your brand and you work on your personal brand, and all that is definitely the truth. But if you're not going to pick up the phone, you're not going to be able to accelerate to market as fast as you need to be able to, because the only way to make sure people hear your message and understand it and don't just bat it away and never think about it again is to talk to them. So if you're thinking about how to go to market today in a world where there are so many access points, but it is a noisy world, the phone will still be your best tool in that first 1 million, 2 million. And honestly, in a lot of businesses, probably going to be your best tool on an ongoing basis. I still believe in having a really proficient outbound team. We also have a really proficient marketing team, and our brand is, as you kind of referred to earlier, we're very Ronsil in a world that is well understood. So our business does what it says on the tin, which I think helps people understand it from a marketing perspective. And again, I'm a massive proponent of Ronsil brands, not necessarily like, don't call yourself Duck if what you actually do is CRM. Like, why? Like, don't try and be clever with this. Like, it's such a busy, noisy world. Being ethereal to people isn't going to help you out. Like, be as understood as you can when people see your brand. So yeah, I think in that sense, it marketing definitely has its place, and the further through the process you go, marketing becomes more valuable and drives cost of acquisition down, and VCs will tell you that's the end game and the holy grail. And do you know what? If you could build a brand that marketed well, you'd make it, because cost of acquisition to lifetime value would be there. I get all that. But outbound, having the right data, and that's not our type of data, that is the Zoom info, Cognism, numbers, phone numbers, email addresses, that type of data, that's going to be your best investment early. So if you're thinking about how to either reboot your go-to-market or do a go-to-market for the first time, the best investment you will make is good quality prospect data, and then having the confidence to pick up the phone. Email won't work. It can work, absolutely. It works to an extent, and it's a great part of an overall comm strategy for sales and marketing. But actually, we all get 1,000 emails and 1,000 LinkedIn messages a day now as founders or as CEOs or as marketing directors or whatever it is. You have to get people on the phone early. And that's, I think, the thing that I would always stand by.
Awesome. So let's jump into it. People love advice that they can take away quite literally. So if you're going back to day 5 with all the knowledge you have now, which is lots, you've probably booked millions of revenue just from picking up the phone.
Yes.
Which is incredible. And you're not saying to people you need a boiler room of 10 people sitting on the phone. It's just CEO to CEO. Like, hey James. So run me through that. Like, let's say you've identified a chief data officer of an enterprise you think needs you. What would be your opening gambit? Like, what sort of research would you do behind? You've got their number, you've got their thing. Either one of 2 questions, I suppose. The first one is, what's that sequence look like? Where would you start? These days it's all about multi-channels, so LinkedIn's and the emails and phone, etc. So draft that out for me. What's your sort of step-by-step sequence? And also the one that everyone loves to know. What would you say to people on the phone?
Yeah, like, let's go with the phone first, because it's the main part of the sequence. I keep knocking this a little bit. For me, you need a script. So it's not about sounding scripted, because the better you get, the better you get at not sounding like you're reading from a script. But knowing your ICP, knowing your ideal customer profile, understanding the one or two core messages that's going to resonate with them, regardless of who they are, regardless of where their chief data officer, is going to be really important. And then the script should be built the right way. So it has a pattern disrupt or a pattern interrupt to start. So something that's going to make the person pause and think, who am I speaking to? Why have they called me? It should start with I'm phoning because, or I'm ringing you today because, or I'm calling today because people like to know that there's a reason for that call to happen. It should have a couple of things that promote or provoke them to think about something that really is resonant in their day-to-day, and that for us is a different lens on thinking about the problem they have with their people in the business. And that's always been our go-to message. This isn't about skills anymore. It's about how we bring the business together around data and make it valuable. So that makes them go, yeah, okay, that's super interesting. I'll speak to you about that a little bit. And then it should have a good open-ended question to get the conversation going. So these are things that if you Google them, you'll find them. And they're right still. Like, I think people are always trying to reinvent the wheel ultimately. Like, how can I be cleverer than the way that it was done 4 years ago or 8 years ago? Well, do you know what? Actually, the component parts of a good cold calling script still work, because they've always worked. Because humans are humans and they haven't changed that much. Everything around the humans has changed, but the way we engage, the way we listen, the way we pick up what someone's saying to us and why someone's saying it to us, those things haven't changed. And actually, things like the pattern disrupt, things like the compelling message that kind of catches their attention and resonates, are more important than ever, not less, because they are so busy. I think the other thing that I think, a world where people have convinced themselves that they shouldn't cold call, if I'm honest, which sounds like a really ridiculous thing, right? But we've spun a narrative now that people are getting too many calls a day to make cold calling valid. I can promise you, most people aren't cold calling. So like, as a CEO of a growing scale up, we've got a good number of employees now. We spend tens of thousands of pounds a month on software and services and all those types of things. Probably receive 2 or 3 cold calls a week. Tops. I'd say tops, actually. Like, that'd be an overshoot. Maybe 2 or 3, like 2 or 3 a fortnight, probably. I would say I've only booked meetings recently from cold calls. Like, if anyone emails me, I'm just like, I don't care. If anyone gives me a generic LinkedIn pitch, I don't care. Somebody gives me a compelling cold call, I'll always give them the time, because they might have something that's worth my time, and you never know what you don't know. So, yeah, I think people have convinced themselves, so they don't have to do it, that cold calling doesn't work. But cold calling works, and it's probably the least penetrated channel at the moment, in my opinion, because people just aren't brave enough to do it anymore.
I think a lot of marketing and sales activity or go-to-market activity is on cycles.
100%.
You know, cold calling was a thing like 20 years ago, and then between 2013 and 2023, it was like the most hated thing ever, and everyone was like, "Bruh." And then I think that's just led into this now fear of the next generation of founders who are probably just a little scared to like
horrible,
pick up
isn't
the
it?
phone, because no one likes to be rejected in person. It's a lot easier to be.
No one likes picking up the phone. It's not fun. It's not pleasant. I'm working with a founder at the moment. Her name's Ivy. She runs a business called National Neurodiversity Training. Their name is also quite Ronsil, which I appreciated, and that's one of the reasons I work with her. Of course, nobody likes cold calling, but you've just got to do it. And in the last 4 to 8 weeks, she's now booked meetings with Samsung, with Apple, like, because she's breaking the noise in a different way. And we talk all the time about the fact that it is uncomfortable. Nobody wants that moment where somebody doesn't want to speak to you or is annoyed that you've called them. I get all that. But actually, the reason that you do it more and you do it again, is that there is light at the end of the tunnel when you get good at it. And I think that's the bit that people just won't do. And most people, I'm a realist, will listen to this and be like, oh, that guy's an idiot. There are other ways. Of course there are other ways. Like that business over there that I read a blog about. They did it without cold calling. But you know what? That's like miracle stuff. That's like moonshot stuff. Businesses that work without a good outbound cadence, especially early on, those are the moonshots. They're not the ones that are the everyday founders experience. And don't listen to the moonshots, because they're spectacular and they're going to do bigger things than most people listening to this podcast are ever going to do. So I think it's about understanding where you are and what's probably going to drive the most opportunity for you.
And the thing is, you can lay down the data as well for people and just go like, hey, Joe, you need to do 5 phone calls or 10 phone calls and you're going to get rejected 9 times. It's going to really hurt, but the next one's going to pay you your ACV. And then you go, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. I could do that.
Yeah. That's where it comes into it. Like, the great thing, like, for a long time, and when you're learning to cold call or you're learning that outbound is important, it is hard and you do have to keep convincing yourself. So, and this isn't a me idea, lots of people have done this, I'm sure, but I actually did hear someone say, I have a note on my phone that says, this thing makes me money. And I literally put a note on my phone that said, pick me up, I make you money. And for the early stages of my career, that was enough to make me keep picking the phone up. And yeah, you've got to do those things because it is uncomfortable and you do get rejected 99 times out of 100. That 100th one is the one that then, like you say, moves the needle for the business.
Yeah, incredible. So back to you, your founder journey so far. So you're a solo founder.
I am. I'm very, very ably supported by some of our early hires. And my brother is actually our CTO, but he came on after about 12 months. But yeah, like I'm very fortunate that a number of our executive team, in my opinion, behave more like founders than a lot of founders that I've seen. So like that is an absolute privilege. I get to be told that I'm a solo founder, but Danny, who is now our chief customer officer, but she came on really as a contractor in the very, very early stages. So we were founded in September 22, and I think she started contracting with us in October 22 and did a bit of contracting for 6 months. We learnt to work together, and she absolutely bleeds green. Like that's a really powerful thing to have, and she is my absolute rock in the business. I just feel better on days where she's working, and I've now realised this to an extent where when she's on annual leave, I just feel slightly more nervous about everything. I don't know why. It's inexplicable. Nothing necessarily changes, but yeah. So Danny and then Ross, my brother, coming on in May 23, I think. So he's just come up. He's just done 2 years. Yeah, those guys and a couple of other members of the exec team, it's like having founders, and that is an absolute privilege because not most founders don't get that. So
yeah, incredible. I mean, the statistics are for and against founders. So you got 46% of co-founders fall out within three or 4 years, but you also have solo founders that typically take 3.5 to 4 times longer to get into sort of high growth. So there's kind of like a pros and cons. Now, I know your answer is going to be build a great team around you. But from that sort of top level tier decision making and knowing that Greg's the boss and that you can truly make decisions yourself, was that a conscious decision, or was it just a case of, I see an opportunity, I can go do this myself and I can hire people? Was there ever a point where you were like, I might need some co-founders here?
So one of the best bits of advice I've ever been given was a guy called Paul Fifield, who founded a business also in the edtech space. Unfortunately, didn't work out in the end, that business. But he said, I basically asked him, I was like, look, I think I'm on this journey. I think I'm going to do this thing. What type of co-founder should I find? And he said, make sure you need one, because a co-founder is the most expensive round you'll ever take. And I was like, it is. Like, even though I've had the idea, even though I believe I could do it on my own, I'd end up giving them 40% or 50% or whatever that might look like. And a brutal observation, and no offense to anybody who is a co-founder, I've never really seen a co-founding group where one of them doesn't kind of act like a solo founder and the other founder or founders just support. And it's not to say that it's really whoever becomes a CEO seems to be the founder and everyone else is still part of the supporting cast. And I think it's not by design, it's just the way it works out. So I look at a lot of co-founders and think that CEO should just have had 100% of that business, because do you know what? He probably could have paid the person that's the co-founder to do the job, or could have found someone to build tech in a way that I did. So obviously brought my brother on, but so yeah, I think that advice of it being the most expensive round you'll ever take really made me question whether I needed a true co-founder. And actually, to get the business off the ground, I didn't. I definitely need all the things we have in the business now, but I was also in a very privileged position that I raised money on day one. So I'm really lucky. I'd done some work with Hatch, who are our lead venture capital firm, almost before they had an operating partner model. They used to get people to support their businesses externally, and I'd rebuilt some go-to-markets. And Jeremy Lazinda, who's I think an increasingly known name in VC, but he's our kind of representative at Hatch, had always said, if you do something, we'll support you in it. Let's just work out what that is. So when I went to him with the idea for what is now Data Literacy Academy, he said, okay, we'll lead the round. Let's go find some more people to put money in. So again, I had that as an advantage, but I do think realistically, most founders end up, yes, they have co-founders, but are they really co-founders, or are they just expensive senior hires? And I mean, expensive in a sense of shares. So yeah, for me, it's probably the decision I'd make again, being completely truthful with you. As I said, I'm extremely fortunate that Danny and Ross and Ant and Ben are so bought into everything we do from an executive perspective. But actually, for me, it was the right decision.
Unreal. Let's talk about team then. So you clearly made some unbelievably good and effective hires. You wouldn't be doing potentially this podcast today. You might, business might have not had the same success as it has today, and has the growth trajectory that hopefully it goes on to have without those initial hires. Danny, you mentioned, and your brother, etc. Hiring's hard. Like, how did you know what to do? I know that sounds ridiculous, right? You go on LinkedIn and you put a job advert out there, and you do a hiring process. And don't worry, Greg, we'll do a couple of rounds of interviews, and maybe might even give them a case study. But actually making a good hire when you're really just yourself is super challenging, and to keep them motivated and involved, and 6 months down the line still believe that you've made a really good decision, and also have made that really good decision, is really damn hard. Any advice there? Is there any mistakes you made, or any really great decisions you made to make that effective?
So I think one thing that we've done well is typically a lot of people that we hire are already road tested with us in some sort of way. Danny being a perfect example. Hired her as a project manager on a contract basis. She wanted it to she was doing freelancing around her main job. And I just knew at that point that she was the right person. So how did I know that? Because we'd worked together for 4 or 5 months on a kind of ad hoc basis. And I think that and obviously your brother's a cheat code kind of thing. Like the fact that my brother's a CTO is very useful. But they definitely all fit into, but most people in the business, especially in those senior positions, we worked with first in some way. And then we said, yeah, okay, they're the right person. So I'll give you another example. We've, in the last 3 months, we've hired Chelsea, who is a really, really like already high performing customer success manager that we've got. She's managing some brilliant accounts for us, but she was the person that ran the NatWest Accelerator in Birmingham, where I founded the company. So she was there on day one. She was my kind of mentor on the program. She was my coach on the program. She was there when we were whiteboarding it up on a big wall in the accelerator hub. Like, she'd been there from day one. We'd worked. She bled green without bleeding green, kind of thing. Like, she was working for NatWest, but she loved our business. She loved what we were doing. She felt part of it. She was also super competent. So like, bring her on 2 years later, it's a pretty surefire thing. Do you know what I mean? So I hate phrases like "you are your network," but actually, a lot of people in our business I do know through sport, I do know through previous career, I do know through university, and it just helps to have more road tested people. I think the other thing that we're doing now is we're creating a really strong core of early careers people, and these aren't necessarily people we've known, but like we do get a number of them through referral, which is, again, we have a referral scheme. So we pay £500 for a mid or junior hire, and we pay £1,000 for a kind of more senior hire to anybody internally who can refer us. That helps because usually high performant people spend time with high performant people, and that's a definite theme, I would say, that the people we're introduced to by our employees are better than the average applicant we get. So I think this hub of young people that we're creating, they're not tainted by the way of work elsewhere. Do you know what I mean? Like, we are a high performant company. We do work hard. The expectation is long hours at times, and that we just get stuff done. So if that's your upbringing in work, you'll be better for it. And therefore, these young people are coming in super smart. And I think we're getting good at that profile of like, what does super smart, very good at comms look like? Above, far and away above the average baseline smart, I would say, is kind of our hiring profile. But then the ability to teach them what work looks like means that they do all go above and beyond and probably buy in more than people who get hired into businesses where they're on their fourth or fifth job, and you come into our world and actually it moves faster, expectations are higher, pressure's higher. Like, those things are true of our business. We're really transparent about them. We had somebody who we really liked, a candidate we really liked this week, so this is good and timely, who we made the offer to. She rejected it, and she rejected it because in her final interview, the kind of culture and values interview, I referenced that the expectation is, if we have stuff that has to be done on an evening or weekend, the expectation is it gets done. And she didn't want to work in a culture where people have to work at weekends at times, and that isn't an everyday. In fact, most people in our business, I'd say, work a very normal cadence, like any other business. But actually, if stuff needs to be done for a customer, or stuff needs to be done to get a deal across the line, or stuff needs to be done to get a product out, the expectation is that you do what needs to be done to make yourself and the business successful. So I think we're also really clear and transparent about that. Don't pretend that you're something you're not. If you are not a fast growth business that has that kind of pressure, don't tell people you are. Because if they come in expecting things to move fast and constant like feelings of success and wins and elation, and you're not getting those, they'll leave. Equally, if you are the fast growth business that does expect that people will work evenings and weekends and acknowledge that it moves their career on exponentially, but they have to take the hit on that, then don't pretend you're not. Because people are going to come in, the first time they're going to be asked to work a weekend, they're either going to hate it or they're going to quit, and you're going to be like, okay, now that thing can't get done because that person just quit because I told them they weren't going to have to do it on a weekend, and actually they are. So I think being transparent about who you are as a business, having a really clear set of values is massively important. So we are, in a previous company, we were invested by a VC called Superseed, and one of the most useful things we did was Superseed's partners did a day with us where they made us set our mission, our vision, and our values, because values-led businesses are more successful than those that are not values-led. So very, very early on, like day one, I set a mission, a purpose, a vision, and values, and those have changed slightly over time, but having them allows us to hire the right people and allows us to be confident and not pretend we're something we're not, because performance mindset, target hitting, goal hitting is a part of our culture. And I'm not going to pretend it isn't. So I think those. Hopefully, that was a lot. That was a lot. But hopefully, all those are useful things.
No, I love it. And how big's the team today?
So in total, there's about 80 people in the business. It's probably a 60-40 split between FTE and contract. Although some of our contractors are our most senior and expensive people. So they're like proper involved in the business kind of thing.
Unreal. So 2 years in, 80 full-time, part-time contract employees. It's a lot of time that you've probably been spending recruiting. Did you go down the recruitment route of hiring an external firm? Has this been done mostly yourself? I know you mentioned the referral scheme you have, which obviously is a quick route to hopefully finding amazing talent. But you've gone from managing yourself to 80 plus people in the space of 24 months. Are you good at it?
Am I good at it? I think my strength is setting a direction and getting people to follow. I would say that I'm not the happiest people manager. I tend to want as few people directly reporting into me as possible. And I think that works for everybody. So I think I only have 4 direct reports. So not even the whole senior team reports into me for a range of different reasons. But no, for me, I guess I'm a comfortable people leader, but I do believe my strengths lie. Like some people are just really good managers. Like their whole job is and should be management because they love the one-to-ones, they love the team meetings, they love that stuff. Honestly, I don't. I like the client stuff and I like the product stuff and I like and I love the go-to-market stuff. So I think just knowing what you want to be, like ultimately, supposedly one of the best things about being a founder is the freedom to choose the bits that you do. And that's not always the case. Don't get me wrong. Like, would I choose to work every other weekend, 16 hours a day, all that kind of stuff? Not most sensible people wouldn't. It's not the best way to live your life most of the time. But you do get a freedom of, I guess, curating the environment you work in. So my curation of the environment is that I get to spend most of my time doing either strategic vision stuff or what you'd still consider operations. So product market fit, go to market, etc. And I'm really fortunate that some of the people that I've already mentioned are brilliant people managers. Absolutely love that part of their role. So yeah, no, I'm probably a reluctant people manager. Actually, one of the things I was talking about last night, and this is something that's on my LinkedIn from 2.5 years ago, when we got to Series A at my last business, I actually went to the CEO when that point in time was supposed to be where I was being promoted to CRO. And basically in that meeting, which was to talk about what's next for my personal journey, I said, look, I've got 24 people in my team now. I want to go back to AEing. I want to be an individual contributor again. I don't want to manage 24 people. I'm not enjoying it. It turns out that's not what I want. And I'm a happier like thinker, I guess, and doer. So yeah, I think I've consistently made that decision in my career to focus on what I'm good at. And hopefully that's a strength, not a weakness, because there are people out there who are phenomenal people managers. So bring them in and get them to be phenomenal people managers.
Love it. Absolutely love it. And great answer. The culture.
Yeah.
So important. We spoke a bit off camera about your like passion around culture, and somebody who I had on the podcast the other day, a gentleman called Sam, he said, culture eats strategy for
Classic.
breakfast,
Yeah.
which, it's a great quote. But what are your thoughts around culture?
Culture does eat strategy for breakfast, but not in the absence of strategy. I think that's the mistake people make. They think about wanting the perfect culture, and sometimes it is at the expense of performance. I think the performance has to be the culture. Ultimately, if you want to grow a business exponentially, you can't do that acting like it's a lifestyle business. So I believe our culture is representative of our values, and our values, I won't go into all 6, but performance mindset is a really key one for us. Always grow, and the idea that if you are coming into our business, you may do one thing today. It's unlikely you'll be doing that same thing in 6 to 12 months. Again, not to keep going on about Danny, but while we've got a point of reference, Danny came in to basically project manage, and she's been in 3 or 4 roles since. And I don't think 2 years ago we ever thought she would be director of customer, but she is now, and she's the perfect person to be doing that job. So you have to be able to grow and keep forcing yourself to grow. And then a problem we had actually in year one. So as we went from just me and James was the first person we hired, and he was a guy that I knew through coaching him at American football. He was an entry-level guy. Brilliant story, actually. Came in, took 18 grand as a salary, which, to be honest, I've now realised you can't live off. So nobody earns anywhere near that low anymore in our business. But he just wanted to be part of the business, and he thought it was worth the punt. This week we have promoted him to head of learner experience, head of head of learner success, basically. Like, one of our key audiences is actually our learners. Like, you've got the customer, who's the business you're working with, but we've got a really key audience in our learners as individual people. So he's gone from somebody who straight out of uni just took the punt on an 18 grand a year job because he thought we could make it work, to now being a head of team and obviously all the benefits that come with that. So that's a really cool
definitely
story.
Not being on 18 grand anymore.
He's not on 18 grand anymore, which is good for him and good for us as well, because we want to show that progression, and we want to show that if you do throw everything into it from an early stage, he's a great example for some of these grads that we're taking on now, that is the promised land. If you want it, it is there for you
In such a short time, really. I mean, he's still probably quite young.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, well, we've got some people who are incredibly ahead in their career now. So yeah, we've got some people who are just way above where they would be if they joined.
I mean, what an opportunity, right? Being
Massive.
25 and working in a business that has had the trajectory that data literacy has had. It is incredible learning curve. And yes, you might be asked to work a little bit harder, but at the end of the day, like, for many, if you're willing, it is not for everyone. Like, I think that is the big thing. It's like, 100%. We are not telling people you have to run a business where you work like overtime, and you if you're an employee, you have to hire these people who are going to pretend that they're working for one of the big four, or BCG or McKinsey, where you're grinding out the long hours. It's a choice. It's a choice. If you sign up for the gig, then you're going to progress in your career like James has, where he's probably 24, 25, have a head of role, being paid pretty good cash. You know, those grad schemes are a lot
more than I was when I was his age.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, those grad schemes that his peers are on, and they're just on their second or third rotation.
Exactly.
He's going to be ahead of the game.
That's exactly it. I mean, I founded Data Literacy Academy about the same time as a really good friend of mine. He was MC at our wedding, founded his own business, Matt Davies Leadership. Does exactly what it says on the tin. It's pretty much him as a lifestyle business at the moment, still 2 years on. He's a phenomenal leadership thinker, speaker, but he wanted a lifestyle business. He has his daughter Harper, who he wants to spend a lot of time with, and it's a brilliant way. He makes more money than he ever did working for the big bank he worked for before, and it's a great business for what he wants from his life. Would he hire somebody like James and be able to accelerate their career to the same extent we have? No, he wouldn't. And therefore, that wouldn't be right for James, because James wanted that, and that's why he joined our business. So it's about anybody who's listening to this, it's about doing what's right for you and having the right people in your business for you. But it goes back to that thing of not lying to them. Like, if Matt hired James and said, I'll make you a head of in 2 years' time, James would be incredibly disappointed today. So I think that's definitely the right mindset is know what you are and have that mindset. So going back to where I was before, which is a bit of a diversion, the other value that I think is really important to us is and I'm always transparent about challenges we've faced. In the first year, as we grew from just me and James, Danny came on, Cam and a few others came on, we started to have a real problem with not like backbiting, but just like, you know, when people got frustrated with each other, everyone was just being too nice. They weren't talking about it. So we did a really focused intervention on radical candour. And that is still now that is a value of the business. And I think, again, that comes across really well when you're trying to move forward at pace. If everyone's being too nice and they won't just say what needs to be said, and they won't go, do you know what? We messed up. Let's fix it. Here's how we messed up quickly, because you can spend a lot of time looking backwards. Don't look backwards, look forwards. Like, work out what's gone wrong later, because actually it's gone wrong, fix it. But you have to have that radically candid conversation to just say, and I am a direct person and possibly sometimes too direct, and that's potentially why I'm not a great people manager. Like, I think industry likes it. because you come in and you just give your expertise and you're very direct and clear about it, works really well in that environment. Actually, when you're managing tens of different personalities and emotional states and things everyone's got going on at home, that level of directness doesn't always work as well. So again, it's probably why I'm very fortunate the 4 people reporting to me have adapted to that, and they see it as a strength, not a weakness now. But in terms of that radical candor piece, again, I think it's very, very important to make it part of your culture. And I would say those 3 things, the idea of performance mindset, the fact that we know where we are, and what we're trying to do, and everyone's chasing it. The fact that in order to do that and make yourself successful, you have to be willing to go above and beyond, grow, change, develop. And that actually, in the same way as Gymshark said, don't be a dick, nobody's being a dick. That isn't accepted, really isn't accepted. If you're a dick, you will go, and it doesn't matter how talented you are, I will fire you on the spot because we don't need dicks. But to be confident in saying what you know is right, and to be saying how we're going to move things forward in a radically candid way, is culturally important to us, and I think really has an impact.
Love it. And yeah, as you say, you've got to facilitate that from a managerial perspective. You have to be able to give the team, and especially those directly reporting into you, have that directness back up the chain.
Definitely.
Next few years then. So 2 years in, let's look another 3 years on. So 5 years in total in the journey. Where do you want data literacy to be?
Yeah, so I think one way or another, I've always been very candid about the fact that we are building a business to exit. I think there's no point building the type of business we're building if you don't see an event at some point. Partly because one of the promises we give people, everybody in our business has a decent options package, if I'm honest, still. I just extended the options pool voluntarily from my own shares to make sure that the next 40 or 50 hires also get options, because I think it's so important. And actually, as a solo founder, one of the benefits you have is that you have a lot. Like, you've got loads of percentage compared to what most co-founders have got. So that was a no-brainer. So if there's any solo founders thinking about extending their share pot, I've done it. It was sensible. It's worked. It means that everybody still gets shares and when they come in. But those are only ever going to be valuable if they're on the promise of a business getting into an event at some point. So I think we've always been candid about that. We're doing it by building a great business. We're not building, I don't care what VCs say. I don't care what they tell us to do. I mean, we went out, raised VC, and then said we're not going to be a SaaS business in the short term. We're going to be a people and services business, and then we'll work out the SaaS bit, which we now have done. So I don't care what the market says necessarily, but I do think you have to, if you're going to give people options, it has to be because they're going to be valuable at some point. In terms of that event, I actually don't think it'll happen in that window that you've just described, more than likely. So we've got some really cool stuff we want to do with new products. And one of the mistakes that I see people make is we have product market fit, and that's been a really exciting thing. Like, product market fit is there. People understand why we do what we do, how we do it, it works for them. But actually, if you rest on your laurels and that's the only thing you ever do, you won't have product market fit by year 3 or year 4. So we're constantly thinking of, like, how can we innovate to make sure we maintain product market fit. So that we've got some cool stuff coming down the kind of product pipeline, both the tech product pipeline and the education product pipeline, that will help us retain product market fit and keep ourselves as the leader in the market that we operate in. We've never really had to work that aggressively on other geographies, and I do want to. I'm obsessed with America. I love it as a country. A lot of people in our business are like American football in terms of their sporting background. So for me, America is somewhere that I've always wanted to live. My wife and I have been talking about it for a really long time. So I can see an America move happening at some point in the next 24 months. But equally, things like the EU AI Act have just come out across Europe, and they've become a prerequisite literacy kind of component. Like, you have to prove you've got a literacy program now to be compliant with the EU AI Act. So there's lots of geographical opportunities as well. And I'm a geek for business. Like, I just love business. It's like, it just excites me. Everything about it. Just like, yeah, I'm just a nerd for business. And therefore, the idea of something like a platform play where a private equity firm acquires us at some point and gives us a load of money to go and build a super business in our space. And pick up M&A in different places. I think not only does it excite me, the idea that that could amplify our message and amplify our performance and all the revenue things that come with that the Ps will care about, but actually just going through those mechanics of like, acquire that, how do you optimize it, how do you build it into the business, how do you make it part of Data Literacy Academy and the culture and those types of things. So all those things are things we're thinking of, and I would say most, if not all of them, will happen in the next 2 to 5 years, depending on which point on that timeline you're in.
Amazing. Well, you've hit your targets in the first couple of years, so I expect big things in the next few years. Greg, luck or talent? This question I always ask towards the end of this podcast. Do you believe that your journey thus far, and you're still a super young guy, and your business is definitely in its early stages still, which is amazing considering the growth you've had. Do you believe that your journey is, or let's say in entrepreneurship in general, being a founder, is it more important to be lucky or be talented?
Talented.
And that's the show.
No, talented ultimately. Like I think, of course, societal expectation is that the answer to that question is luck. But actually, the best founders I've ever seen are immensely talented at what they do. They're either immensely technically expert and they can solve problems that most of the world can't solve, and that is not something I am. Like I am not capable of solving that type of problem. Or they are top 1% in something, and whether that is go to market, whether it's sales, whatever it might be, quite frankly, very few people are lucky. Actually, they are either more talented and smarter or harder working, or both. And actually the top founders are probably both of those things, but luck isn't really a thing. Like I've been fortunate that my network has really supported me in this journey, but I spent a number of years cultivating that network and always made it my intention to know lots of people and make sure that when I was involved in sport and uni and all those things, like, you were building your network constantly. That's not lucky. That's like, it's not necessarily, when it comes to network building, like the most intentional thing, but you do it because you put effort into it. Like you give more time back to different people so that when you need their support, they support you. Those types of things. Those things aren't luck. If founders are listening to this thinking, oh, I'll just get lucky one day, you won't. Don't get me wrong, a couple of founders, like not a couple, but a number of founders got really rich off the back of the COVID boom and the way that the market exploded and all those types of things. Some of that was luck, I imagine. They had a good idea that was timely at that point. They made a no-brainer decision to exit, and now they're millionaires or billionaires with businesses that should never have been successful. I think there's some really good examples of that. That's probably the closest thing to luck. But I bet during that 2.5 years of COVID, they worked harder than anybody else to get that luck. So I think that's as close as you're going to get. Everybody else who I've ever met who's a phenomenal founder, I'm like, you are more talented, smarter, and harder working than the average person, and therefore you make your own luck, or you just justify the success you have. And yeah, so I think talent and smarts over luck most of the time.
Epic. Greg, where can people find you?
LinkedIn, and I am very active, so if you don't want me on your timeline, probably don't connect. But yeah, I mean, I post every day on LinkedIn, sometimes multiple times a day. I do, if I feel like a conversation's worth having, will always respond to direct messages and connection requests and all those types of things.
So Greg Freeman on
LinkedIn? Greg Freeman, Data Literacy Academy. I think it's /Greg Data, but I set that up about God knows how long ago, a long time ago. So if it's not that, I'm sorry. But yeah, Greg Freeman, Data Literacy Academy. On LinkedIn is probably the best way. Otherwise, data events, those types of things are also things that I'm at.
You'll probably see Data Literacy sponsoring those events.
You'd imagine so.
Awesome. Greg, you have been my everyday founder. Thank you so much.
Thank you.